Chapter 162, The Capital 6. Does she really have to pull her pocket watch from her inner pocket, hold her arm sideways, and say those lines? Elaster form? What does that even mean? If she really has to go through all that process, that weapon has zero practicality in combat, doesn't it? Eugene grumbled in his mind. Even though he thought that way, he could see that wasn't actually the case. The previous day, Carmen had shown Eugene her Heaven Genocide's destiny form for the first time. Eugene had been able to follow the transformation process with his eyes at the time, but Carmen's speed right now was incomparable to her speed from yesterday. When she had muttered, "Elaster form," under her breath, her right hand was already covered in a silver gauntlet. In other words, she had slowed down her destiny form's transformation the previous day to show it to Eugene. Amazing! Eugene marveled as he looked at Carmen's right hand. Destiny form had previously turned her fingers into blade-like claws. Elaster form was Heaven Genocide's gauntlet form. The knuckle guard looked rough and tough, clearly designed for smashing her opponents to pieces. Iris had been casually deflecting attacks with a twisted smile pasted on her face, but Carmen's Elaster form was enough to make her stop smiling. Her eyes were now wide open. She blinked as she looked at Carmen's right hand. "What the?" Iris muttered. What was that ridiculous name she had just mumbled? What's up with that fist? All kinds of thoughts jumbled in Iris' head. This centuries-old dark elf looked wild and free, and her manner of speaking did not belie that impression. However, that didn't mean she could understand Carmen's peculiar preference. Carmen didn't care much about Iris' approval either. Her left foot soundlessly tapped the ground, and Carmen moved forward as if somebody had pushed her from behind. Keeping her left fist on her waist this time, Carmen pulled her right fist back, and Eugene could hear a mechanical noise coming from her elbow. Swoosh. Iris couldn't use her demon eye at the right moment. Before she could figure out what was going on, Carmen's fist forced Iris to understand the situation. The shock was so powerful that Iris' feet left the floor as she was pushed back. Iris couldn't even make a sound as Carmen's punch made her bend over. People generally need a moment to recover their breath after taking a hard punch to the gut. But before Iris was able to do that, another shock overwhelmed her, restarting the whole process. Carmen's hits showered her at an unbelievable rate, not giving her a moment of rest. Carmen's speed was so ridiculous that Eugene could only follow part of her movement. Was it even possible to move that way? Keeping her legs still, she didn't use the momentum of her upper body, including her waist. She had previously had her right fist at her waist, but now, it pistoned through the air as she continued to launch her fist attack. During the whole process of swinging her right fist back and forth, Carmen got faster and faster. Was it possible for her to do all that with just her right arm? Machine gun blow, Carmen spoke as she finished her combination strike. Even after attacking Iris so many times that the latter couldn't even breathe, Carmen wasn't out of breath. The sound of Carmen's fist attacks belatedly followed after. Cough. Iris used her darkness to stop herself from flying backward. The sheer amount of strikes per second she had eaten made her spit out blood and pieces of her intestines, but she was still in one piece. As Iris was pushed back, Eugene sprung at her. Deflecting Iris' punch, Eugene swung his knife at her. Biting her blood-smeared lips, Iris summoned another cluster of darkness. When her darkness was about to stop Eugene's knife, Eugene made his sword force explode. Then with extraordinary control he covered the blade with sword force once more. The knife was only as long as Eugene's fingers, but he had no trouble spinning it all over in a wild, chaotic dance. Before Iris' eyes, her darkness was shredded to pieces. Although the pieces wouldn't disappear, Eugene's attacks were too fast for them to reattach. Iris' insides ached. She couldn't believe that she had let Carmen land that many hits on her in such a short time. Iris hurriedly tried to retreat, wanting to get herself together, but Eugene's non-stop attack from above brought back a very old memory. This style of attacking from above. Eugene's attacks were fast and heavy. He put his whole weight behind each strike. His wild knife dance seemed chaotic, but Iris couldn't find an opening to counterattack. When she thought she had finally found a chance to attack, Eugene used her counterattack against her. Azura rampage? Iris came to a realization. The darkness dispersed by Eugene's attacks couldn't come back together. Throughout his tempestuous assault, Eugene had not only used the knife but also magic. In order to make sure that Iris' darkness wouldn't simply restore itself, he had used space expansion spells between his attacks from above. On top of that, Eugene had made his sword force into a thin and long thread and used it to bind the small clumps of darkness that drifted apart. How's this possible? Iris wondered. Iris certainly wasn't capable of doing this. Sword force thread. I know this one. She wouldn't be able to forget that moment even if she tried for her entire life. The moment she had lost her dear father 300 years ago. That damn Vermouth had slaughtered her father with that horrible sword, filling Iris with despair. At the time she had wished she could throw herself between them and save her father. The moonlight sword emitted that pale moonlight that seemed to be the embodiment of destruction. She had been well aware that the light would burn her to ashes, but she had been perfectly willing to make that sacrifice for her father. However, she was unable to do that. A son of a bitch who was just as annoying as the fucking Vermouth had stopped her. The stupid Hamel. Had she not had the demon eye of darkness, she would have been slaughtered by Hamel. There was a big gap in power between Iris and Hamel. Indeed, she was the most powerful dark elf, the demon king of Fury's daughter, and the so-called Rakshasa princess. However, Iris had been the weakest one in the demon king of Fury's castle 300 years ago. The sword force threads connected with each other inside the darkness. Eugene spun his karambit around his index to the back of his hand. As he wrapped the sword force thread on his left hand, he continued to meticulously attack with other methods. He had summoned a gust of fair wind and his lightning flame sparked around him. His left hand moved as if he was playing with a cat's cradle. Dead end. Iris thought in shock. As the threads furtively approached Iris, they tied her up. The threads looked weak and thin, but they were sharp enough to mutilate bodies as soon as they touched the threads. Had Iris been a normal dark elf, the threads would have mangled her. Rip. Dozens of lines were drawn on Iris' red suit. Eugene's sword force threads had cut her clothes, relieving her skin amidst the gaps. It was soft, without a single blemish or callus. Even though Eugene's sword force had touched her skin, it had only drawn drops of blood from her skin. She's still persistent. Eugene gritted his teeth. The demon king of Fury's children were adopted. Instead of passing his power through blood, the demon king had bestowed various abilities on his adopted children. Iris' demon eye of darkness had belonged to the demon king of Fury. The demon king had also bestowed her with a very durable body that was uncommon among elves. You bastard. Iris crumpled up as she tried to wiggle out of Eugene's sword force thread. Pizzy. Eugene made the lightning flame mixed with his sword force to swallow Iris whole, but it wasn't enough to make Iris lose consciousness. You are the Lionheart Hound. Iris cried. Well, he was Hamel who had died 300 years ago. He had just reincarnated as Vermouth's descendant. Of course, Iris wasn't able to reach that kind of conclusion. No one would. On top of that, Iris knew that Vermouth, whom she hated, had passed down Hamel's style to his son after Hamel's death. She was also aware of how the descendants of Vermouth's son had continued to inherit the Hamel style. Thank you for your misunderstanding. Eugene thought with a mental shrug. Without answering, Eugene reached out his hand to Iris. His lightning flame had still been burning up Iris, but in accordance with Eugene's will, the lightning flame had condensed itself, putting pressure on Iris. Carmen sprung forth from Eugene's back. Eugene no longer doubted the practicality of Carmen's heaven genocide. She hadn't even said form change, but her right hand was in a totally different form from the previous Alaster form. Her heaven genocide no longer looked like claws or a gauntlet. It was now a heavy cannon shooter, covering her entire right arm. Sighing. Through her cores, the unrefined mana in the air was concentrated on Carmen's right arm. Whoosh. She was using the white flame formula to the fullest extent. Only a few people had reached the 7th star of white flame formula after Great Vermouth. Since Doine's Lionheart had died, Carmen Lionheart was the only living person who had reached the 7th star of the white flame formula. To put it simply, Carmen was the strongest person in the Lionhearts. Wait, is she also using the lightning flame? Eugene thought as he realized what had happened. The part of the lightning flame that had been tying Iris up was also concentrated in Carmen's iron cannon shooter. The circuit engraved on the surface of the cannon shooter lighted up. Iris' eye shone in black light. Thud. Carmen's attack was different from before. Yet Iris felt an immense shock. Her darkness burst. Iris had used her darkness passage to diffuse the power of Carmen's attack, but it was still powerful. The shock spread throughout Iris' entire body, breaking her teeth and bursting her eyeball. Iris flew backward. Carmen had created a chance for Eugene to attack, and Eugene didn't want to miss this opportunity. Eugene grabbed the moonlight sword's handle inside the cloak. Right now, Eugene saw a possibility of killing her with the moonlight sword. Iris was flying away like a puppet without strings. Hamel had won and survived as he went through numerous battles 300 years ago. Therefore he knew that a rash conclusion during battles equaled a sword shoved into his throat. Letting go of the moonlight sword, Eugene held a... Carmen had developed her intuition to a clairvoyant level, but unlike Eugene, she lacked the experience of surviving life and death battles. Although Carmen's power was respectable, she spent her whole life in the Age of Peace, where demon kings and humans didn't try to exterminate each other's kind. That was why she hadn't sensed something was wrong and just marched forward. Blast form. Gigant impact. Carmen thought. She knew her attacks had worked. The power of her attacks was lessened while trying to break through Iris' darkness barriers and having been diffused by Iris' darkness passage. Still, she had successfully destroyed Iris' innards. Carmen saw a chance of victory. Although she wasn't sure whether or not her body would be able to take it, she knew she could kill the Rakshasa princess if she took a few more steps forward. The question of what would happen after she killed the Rakshasa princess crossed Carmen's mind, but she concluded that there was nothing to worry about. The Rakshasa princess was the one to instigate the fight. Besides, the Rakshasa princess and her Fury Independence Army were problems for Helmuth too. So Carmen would have no problem if she killed the Rakshasa princess right here. For the Lionheart's honor. Carmen solemnly thought. The Lionheart's honor was now in the gutter. Killing the Rakshasa princess was the best starting point to pull out the clan's honor from the drain. Carmen's right arm changed its form. She really wanted to speak the names, but there was no time to speak them out. Form change. Destiny form. Destiny breaker. Whoosh. She should be shortening the distance between her and Iris, but she got further away from Iris. What's going on? Wasn't I stepping forward? My sense of distance is all jumbled up. Why did I catch on late? Carmen thought in perplexity. That was because she could never imagine Eugene, who was fighting on the same side as her, would use subspace magic and grab her nape to pull her backward. Why? Before Carmen could form a sentence. A pitch-black darkness sphere rose up in the space where Carmen was trying to move forward. The darkness summoned by Iris all appeared abruptly, but Carmen and Eugene could avoid it since there was a telltale sign. Iris' demon eye glowed before she used her power. However, the darkness showed up without any telltale sign this time. Besides, the darkness right now had a completely different property from the previous darknesses that had appeared beforehand. Carmen could feel it even though she hadn't touched it. If she hadn't stopped, no, if she had kept marching forward, she would have died without realizing the reason. Tisk. Iris clicked her tongue in discontentment. Iris had stopped flying when she crashed against her darkness, bending her upper body backward. Iris leaned forward, her bones creaking. Her eye had burst, so her eye socket was empty. However, blood and darkness were whirling in her empty eye socket. Are you a lucky one, or do you just have a great instinct? Iris spoke, but blood dripped out of her mouth the entire time she talked. Then, chuckling, she leaned against her darkness. It's a pity. I could have crushed you into a meat pie if I had been just a little bit faster. The darkness sphere, which had previously appeared, popped and disappeared. Slowly sliding down the wall, Iris stared at Carmen and Eugene. Princess, one of the dark elves spoke, standing outside Iris' darkness. We are out of time. It hasn't been that long. It's just been 10 minutes, right? They are already approaching. This country is uselessly safe. Iris stood up, clicking her tongue. As she stood, she could feel her legs had weakened slightly. Still, she didn't stagger and stood upright, using all her remaining energy. Interesting, Iris thought. Humans had put her in a tight spot. The humans were younger than Yagan, the motherfucker, and the demon king of Incarceration's 3 demons. Instead of feeling humiliated, Iris felt ecstatic about this. Feeling her tired eyes, she blinked as she giggled. Then her exploded eye regenerated and her crushed teeth grew back. I'm guessing our negotiation has broken down, huh? Iris spoke brightly. Eugene could feel Iris' desire to kill him and Carmen had subsided. Shrugging, she gestured at the dark elves behind her. One of the dark elves approached, putting a cigarette between Iris' fingers and lighting it up with a golden lighter. Or shall we sit at the table and begin negotiating again? Iris asked, blowing the smoke. I can try talking to your successor if you would just let me kill you, Eugene calmly answered. It is difficult for me to grant your wish. The Fury Independence Army means something because I, the rightful heir of my father, exist. The dark elves gathered around Iris. One dark elf took off her suit jacket and put it around Iris' shoulder since Iris' clothes were as good as rags now. Eugene Lionheart and Carmen Lionheart, Iris called as she savored the cigarette smoke in her mouth, holding the cigarette that had burnt away in an instant. Let's meet under sunlight, not in a musty basement. When she dropped her cigarette, Iris and the 10 dark elves dropped to the darkness underneath their feet. Using the darkness as a passage, all dark elves disappeared from this basement. She didn't have the power to do this 300 years ago. Eugene thought as the moment when Carmen almost got crushed by Iris' darkness sphere came to his mind. The darkness on the floor turned back to natural shadow, not Iris' darkness. Glaring at the shadow, Eugene was absorbed in thoughts. It is a shocking improvement, Iris. You could only shoot and move fast 300 years ago, but I now see that you have gotten pretty good at close combat. On top of that, you can use new abilities with your demon eye. You must have trained a lot to become a demon king. Eugene chuckled as he pulled out his index finger from the karambit knife. I'm lucky, Eugene concluded. He didn't have to feel bad about failing to kill Iris in this basement. Actually, Iris was the one who should feel bad about today's battle. Maybe she was certain she could surely kill both Eugene and Carmen if the third party hadn't interfered. Although for a different reason, Eugene was also confident. In fact, he had become more certain as he fought against her. No matter what he did today, he wouldn't have been able to kill Iris. If Eugene had kept fighting, he surely would have needed to devise an escape plan. However, Iris had retreated even before he tried. Their fight was short, but Eugene had learned about the new power of Iris' demon eye. She definitely couldn't have done all that 300 years ago. To sum up, Eugene had learned about the current Iris, but Iris didn't know much about Eugene. He thought he made a great choice of not pulling out his Moonlight Sword, Demon Spear, or the Annihilation Hammer. This would be Eugene's greatest advantage the next time he tried to kill Iris. Phew. Carmen changed her Heaven Genocide into a pocket watch again. Are you all right? Eugene asked as he looked at Carmen's bloody right arm. Without answering, Carmen flicked her fingers in a certain direction, making her coat fly back to her. When Carmen first entered the basement, the coat had fallen off her shoulders, unable to keep up with Carmen's speed. You helped me, Carmen spoke as she put her coat around her. Don't mind it. I would have died if you didn't pull me away. I was behind you so I could see the bigger picture. That was all it took for him to figure it out. Carmen couldn't really understand it, but she didn't pry any further. She wasn't able to feel her drooping right arm. Therefore Carmen pulled out her cigar with her left hand and put it in her mouth. Lighter, Carmen spoke out of the blue. Pardon? Eugene asked back. The golden lighter used by the dark elf just now. It made a sound when she opened it. Ah, yup, Eugene half-heartedly said. I wanted to ask where she bought it. Lady Carmen, you don't light your cigar. I might want to light it someday, Carmen mumbled as she turned away. Chapter 163. The Capital, 7. When Eugene and Carmen walked upstairs, the 3rd Division of the Black Lions under Carmen's command was waiting for them on the 1st floor. Are you okay? Nathan, the vice captain of the 3rd Division, came up to Carmen with a serious face after seeing Carmen's bloody right arm. It's just a scratch, Carmen answered nonchalantly. As the vice captain, Nathan had been assisting Carmen for dozens of years. As a result, he knew Carmen better than anyone, so he could understand the true meaning of her overly calm response. She means it hurts a lot, Nathan thought. Her injury wasn't fatal. There were no broken bones or torn muscles. Time would completely heal her. However, Carmen was in excruciating pain right now. It was understandable, as her right arm was bleeding so profusely that it had stained her entire sleeve. Should I give her a painkiller? The only thing he could notice were the beads of cold sweat on her forehead. Nathan would have handed Carmen a painkiller without hesitation if Eugene hadn't been present, but he understood Carmen's personality very well. She must want to look like a cool, strong martial artist in front of her very young junior. The White Dragon Knights are outside, Nathan spoke quietly. That's not a surprise. Is that Alchester kid here too? Carmen chuckled. Yes, he is here. Even Eugene knew who Alchester was. When the question of who was the strongest knight in the continent was raised in a conversation, several names were always mentioned. The Lionheart Patriarchs, Doyne's Lionheart the Immortal White Lion, Carmen Lionheart the Silver Lion, and the commanders of famous knightly orders. Alchester Dragonic, the commander of the White Dragon Knightly Order of Kiel, was one of those commanders. He was a duke, but he never showed up at social parties or was involved with any politics. As a matter of fact, Alchester's title was bestowed on him out of the emperor's utmost respect for his dear old friend and guard. His title of a duke was a symbol of the best knight of Kiel. When Eugene, Carmen, and the 3rd Division went outside, there were no spectators because the knights surrounding the building were intimidating enough that spectators wouldn't dare to come up close. Long time no see. A red-haired man with a dragon symbol on his chest plate approached Carmen. Although Eugene had never met him in person, he could tell at first glance that the man was Alchester Dragonic. So, he is the best knight of the Kiel Empire, huh? Eugene thought as he observed Alchester. The current emperor of Kiel, Straught II, was known to publicly claim that Duke Alchester Dragonic was the best and strongest knight in the empire. However, the emperor said those things because the Lionhearts hadn't sworn absolute loyalty to the emperor. For a long time, the emperor used various methods to have the Lionhearts under his control. His greed was reasonable. The name Lionheart had a meaning. The Lionheart clan was extraordinarily influential to be considered an ordinary clan. The Black Lion Knights were considered equally powerful as the White Dragon Knights. The young knights who indulged in the fantasy of knight wanted to join the White Lion Knights rather than the White Dragon Knights or Imperial Knights of Kiel. That was also understandable. Those young knights respected Great Vermouth, who had fought against the Demon Kings and saved the world, more than the emperor who reigned the empire. Is your right arm okay? Alchester asked Carmen, looking at her bloody right arm. The emperor's right-handed man and guard, Alchester Dragonic, was a handsome man with red hair and blue eyes that stood out. It's just a scratch. It seems like it needs to be treated, Alchester spoke with a serious face. I'll receive treatment in the Lionheart estate after I finish talking to you, Carmen answered as she looked at the building. Even though an intense battle had taken place in the basement, the building's exterior looked intact. After checking that she could sense no presence in the building, she asked, were there any civilian casualties? There were none. Alchester shook his head. Are you aware of what happened here? Your vice-captain gave me a rough explanation. So the Rakshasa princess and her dark elves were occupying that mercenary guild's office. First, I want to make sure that the Lionhearts are totally blameless here, Carmen spoke as she wiped her bloody hand on her pants. I have heard that one of your elven maids and one craftsman from a prosthetic shop had been kidnapped, so to find them. Shifting his gaze to Eugene, Alchester continued, the famous Eugene Lionheart barged into the headquarters of the Rakshasa princess and her dark elves solo. To be accurate, I was guided here. I didn't barge in, Eugene spoke as he raised an arm. You are very reckless. Maybe because you are young, Alchester mumbled, frowning. His blue eyes were partially hidden now. Snorting at Alchester's remark, Eugene said, the elf under my protection had come to Ceres with me. She was kidnapped before my very eyes. I have a responsibility to protect her and I couldn't neglect it. That's some chivalry you got there. But son, keep this in mind, you are alive today because you got lucky, Alchester warned Eugene. Have you been waiting here to talk about this kind of stuff? Carmen asked as she put her cigar between her fingers instead of her mouth. Kid, I thought you must be busy because you are the Alchester, commander of the White Dragon Knightly Order. Stop calling me kid. No matter how big you have gotten, you are always a kid to me. I still remember when you swung your wooden sword as you sniffled. Stop talking about trivial stuff, Alchester said as he shut his eyes tightly. Then I will start talking about serious stuff. Commander of the White Dragon Knightly Order. I am not an Imperial Knight of Kiel and have no desire to receive a title. However, I am a citizen born in Ceres and love the Kiel Empire. So I'm going to give an admonishment to you, Commander, Duke and Emperor's right-hand man. Carmen's voice was cold. Unlike usual, she didn't try to look solemn. Why are the dark elves in Ceres? Alchester became quiet. It is none other than the Rakshasa princess, the leader of Fury Independence Army. We have formally requested the Keel authorities to let us know if the Rakshasa princess enters the Keel Empire. We even exchanged documents regarding the matter. Carmen spoke as she quietly looked at Alchester. That is because... Alchester tried to say something but was cut off by Carmen. Although this is really not the time to say this, my niece-in-law has generously bribed several nobles working in the Immigration Bureau to let us know if the Rakshasa princess arrived in the Empire. We did so to prepare for Rakshasa princess arrival, so you are not seriously going to take issues with bribes right now, right? Niece-in-law? Is she talking about Ancilla? Oh yeah. Carmen is my great-aunt. Eugene thought as he realized how old Carmen was once again. We, the Lionhearts, are citizens of Keel living in Ceres. And we have absolute faith in how Ceres is the safest city on the continent. Of course it should be. You do know how much tax we pay and the donations we make each year, don't you? So, why should we be the ones who have to confront criminals who kidnap our servants? Looking at Eugene, Carmen spoke coldly. And why in the world should we hear the word reckless from you about this matter? I apologize, so please don't be too angry. Alchester shook his head, heaving a long sigh. I am aware of how the Lionhearts are totally blameless in this matter. However, about the Rakshasa princess. Yes, I will be honest with you. The Immigration Bureau of Keel didn't know the Rakshasa princess and her dark elves had entered the Keel Empire. So they are not only kidnappers but are also illegal immigrants, am I correct? Yes, you are right. Alchester agreed readily. Eugene found Alchester's reactions a bit surprising as he heard the conversation between Alchester and Carmen. He was the commander of the White Dragon Knightly Order, who was also called the best knight in the Empire. Due to his title, Eugene had thought Alchester would be an upstanding man, though a bit old-fashioned. However, Alchester turned out to be a timid gentleman. I also apologize about the police bureau's ineptitude in the incident that happened in the capital. If you want, I will let you know who took responsibility in the future. Alchester continued with his explanation. It seems you will need a new head patrol guard to oversee this district and a new immigration officer at Keel's Gate. Carmen spoke flatly. I will order my people to do so. Alchester nodded. Can you really just say that, kid? Wouldn't His Majesty be displeased if you take a Lionheart's advice to take care of this matter? As the members of the Lionheart clan, if you can overlook today's incident, we won't have such a problem. Alchester spoke gently as he raised his head. Every White Dragon Knight who had been surrounding the building took a step backward. But the sound of footsteps echoed in the street as one. The White Dragon Knights moved in unison. That was when Eugene realized that no one else besides the White Dragon Knights was in the street. I see. So everything will be okay as long as we keep our mouths shut, huh? Carmen spoke in a sarcastic tone. I don't want to worry people of Ceres with this incident, said Alchester. Nothing will be solved if you just cover this up. Carmen had a hint of anger in her voice. We aren't covering it up. Once we have investigated this matter enough, the police bureau will make a formal announcement to let the citizens know about the incident, so the populace can easily accept the situation. Then we will ask for their understanding. How about the Lionhearts? Are we getting just one apology? Is there something you want? Without answering, Carmen was now deep in thought. Eugene quietly marveled at how Carmen never let go of control in the conversation as she smoothly continued to talk. Right now, she wasn't a crazy grandma who put an unlit cigar in her mouth and hid a weapon called Heaven Genocide in her pocket watch. She was now living up to her title of the Lionheart Elder. The Rakshasa princess might try to attack us again, so I want White Dragon Knights to stand guard around the main estate's walls. Until when do you want my knights to stand guard? You should figure it out yourself. The Rakshasa princess escaped from this place, but I don't know where she escaped. Alchester pondered for a moment, stroking his chin. After a moment he agreed, all right. I will personally stand guard in the main estate until we know for sure that the Rakshasa princess has left Keel. You will be guarding the main estate yourself? Carmen asked in shock. Yes, I will. Then, turning his head in Eugene's direction, Alchester began to scan Eugene's unscathed body as he continued. I'm also doing this out of my personal interest, so you don't have to worry about His Majesty. Carmen pondered without responding to Alchester. Although Alchester said he was doing it for personal reasons, Carmen could feel that wasn't the case. Alcester was the best knight in the Empire and also the commander of the White Dragon Knights. In other words, Alcester was the Emperor's sword, who never left the Emperor's side. So for Alcester to leave the Emperor's side and ask Carmen permission to be the Lionheart's guard, it must mean His Majesty must be acting greedy again. Several days ago, Gilead the Patriarch had visited the palace and had an audience with the Emperor to talk about the Demon King of Incarceration's warning. Therefore, starting this year, the countries made a union to prepare for the upcoming war. However, no country in the continent would be thinking, let's unite and fight against Helmuth or the Demon Kings. Using the alliance as an excuse, the countries would show off their powers and try to gain something if they could. The Kiel Empire was already an empire, but Strahd II wanted to expand his empire. His ambition had ended in smoke because he had to stay on guard against Helmuth. However, he had been furtively revealing his desire to conquer Nahama until last year. The Lionhearts experienced rebellion. Our power has gotten weaker. The changes we made still haven't been accepted by the people of the Lionheart clan, Carmen thought bitterly. The history and the pride of being great Vermouth's descendants made up the current Lionheart clan. Just like the Black Lion Knights, the White Lion Knights were one of the Lionheart clan's powers. However, they weren't born as members of the Lionhearts. What united the White Lion Knights was their loyalty to the Lionheart clan and their pride in serving the Lionhearts. Yet the Lionhearts had been humiliated and weakened after the rebellion. Would they still be proud of the current Lionhearts? They will. Carmen's thoughts remained the same. The rebellion inside the Lionhearts had made the clan suffer from an unprecedented amount of humiliation. The immortal White Lion had been killed by his grandson. The main family's first son had started the rebellion after being blinded by the Demon King's power, and a collateral family member disloyal to the main family had been the root cause of this all. Still, the Lionhearts would not crumble. Doine's Lionheart may have died, but Carmen Lionheart was alive and well. So what if the first son had committed a sin against heaven by killing and trying to make other Lionhearts into sacrificial offerings? Carmen turned her head to Eugene. Eugene was still young since he was 20. However, the boy would be revered by not only the Lionhearts but also all the knights on the continent in the near future. From the fight with the Rakshasa princess, Carmen became certain of her thoughts. I will feel easier if you come to the estate. Carmen nodded. Besides, you will also continue to stay in the main estate, Lady Carmen. Alcester shrugged. There are 3 of us, you, me and this boy, Carmen said as she kept her eyes on Eugene. 3, huh? Alcester thought as he nodded with a faint smile on his face. Exactly what happened down there? We fought with the Rakshasa princess, Carmen casually answered. With just the 2 of you? Yes, it would have been better if we killed her. But it turns out the hundreds-of-year-old dark elf was aiming to be the next Demon King for a reason. As Carmen explained to Alcester what had transpired, Eugene began to think. Iris retreated because she worried about the White Dragon Knights interfering in their fight. She didn't want to fight against Alcester while still fighting Eugene and Carmen. Something is not right. Eugene groaned. From the start, Iris had no intention of negotiating about the elves in the Lionheart Forest, so she didn't act with common sense. She had illegally entered Kiel, killed the mercenaries and taken over their office. Then she kidnapped Lavera to get Eugene involved in this matter. She said something about being considerate of the Lionhearts. Eugene thought as he recalled what Iris said. The Lionhearts never negotiated with dark elves. Since Iris was well aware of this fact, she had tried to make Eugene a hostage. Did she have to do that? Iris controlled her demon eye of darkness far better than 300 years ago. It was so good that she had kidnapped Lavera without alerting Eugene right away. She had also disappeared with her dark elves before Eugene's eyes. She had decided to go so far that she was willing to kidnap and hold hostages. She had various options. If Iris had sneaked into the main estate and tried to abduct the elves with her demon eye of darkness, then how could Eugene stop her? What if she had no choice? The World Tree had already rooted itself in the Lionheart Forest, forming a barrier that protected the elves. She can't get in there. Eugene came to a realization. He had to try very hard not to laugh. Then there is really no need for the White Dragon Knights to protect the main estate. No, they are needed. Iris may not be able to infiltrate the forest, but she is capable of pulling crazy stunts. When Eugene had thought that much, he couldn't help but wonder. This place was none other than the Kiel Empire, and Iris had acted this crazy against the Lionhearts. Helmuth would no longer recognize Iris as one of their own, no matter how much the Demon King of Incarceration respected Iris as the Demon King of Fury's daughter. She is going to leave Helmuth. Eugene reached a conclusion. Helmuth had never seen Iris and the Dark Elves in a positive light. Therefore, the demon folks in Helmuth would never accept Iris as their Demon King, even if she had become strong enough to be respected as a Demon King. It's a bit late, but let me introduce myself, Alcester spoke cautiously. While Eugene was deep in thought, the conversation between Alcester and Carmen came to an end. With a faint smile, Alcester approached Eugene and extended his hand. I'm Alcester Dragonic. I have heard a lot about you, Eugene spoke as he received Alcester's handshake. He only resembles his hair and eye color. Eugene thought as he recalled the Dragonic, whom he had seen in his past life. His title of the best knight of Kiel was not the only reason why Eugene knew and took an interest in the name Alcester Dragonic. 300 years ago, Eugene had met Alcester's ancestor. He babbled about how he was half human and half dragon. There once was a crazy bastard who had abandoned his original surname and changed it to Dragonic. Chapter 164. The Capital, 8. There was a man named Oryx Dragonic 300 years ago. Just like Vermouth, Oryx suddenly made a name for himself in the world. During the time when demonic beast armies had invaded the Kiel border, a general thought that his army had no chance of winning on this chaotic battlefield, so he was about to order his people to retreat. At that moment, Oryx literally dropped from the sky. After he appeared, he slaughtered half of the demonic beast armies with his sword force that reached tens of meters in length. With Oryx's help, the Kiel army had a chance of winning, and they didn't let it go to waste. They successfully drove out the demonic beast army from the Kiel border. Most heroes who lived during the era had a story or two like this. That was only natural. The world was in chaos 300 years ago. There were wars going on everywhere, the enemies were always strong, humans were weak and outnumbered. People couldn't help but dream of becoming a hero. When somebody asked Oryx about where he had learned swordsmanship, Oryx told the man that he had learned it from his father. When someone else interrupted the conversation and asked how he could accumulate that much mana, his answer remained the same. In fact, he used the same answer for most questions. In the end, the general became so frustratingly curious that he had to ask who Oryx's father was. My father's name is Parliske. He is a dragon. Although the world believed so, Hamel knew that Oryx Dragonic wasn't half human and half dragon. His name was Vanos Allen. Just like Hamel, he was a mercenary. At one point in time, Vanos and Hamel had been in the same mercenary guild. They had even fought together on the battlefield. He wasn't Hamel's friend, though. Vanos was a narrow-minded bastard. When the young Hamel had first joined the mercenary guild, Vanos had become Hamel's direct superior since Vanos was a year older than Hamel. Vanos would order Hamel to empty chamber pots and wash the senior mercenary's smelly clothes. Since the tradition of the group's youngest member doing all sorts of dirty work had already been in place even in that fucked-up era, Hamel obediently followed Vanos' orders. Hamel was still young at the time, but true to his inborn nature, his temper was getting worse and worse. At first he simply followed orders, but at one point all the things that he was forced to do began to annoy him. That bastard is just a year older than me, but he keeps ordering me around just because he is my direct superior. Vanos was not the only one that Hamel didn't like. He also hated the mercenary seniors. There was nothing to learn from them and they deserved no respect. Some of them even looked at the young Hamels, but in a very sexual way, and it wasn't all that rare for these kinds of incidents to happen in the mercenary guild during the era. Of course, Hamel would have rather died before he accepted any kind of sexual harassment, and that was how all hell ended up breaking loose. One of the mercenary seniors stretched a little too close to Hamel's sleeping bag. Having finally run out of patience, Hamel simply beat the shit out of his senior. Naturally, Vanos also flipped out. He showered Hamel with curses, so Hamel beat up Vanos as well. The leader of the mercenary guild then jumped on Hamel, saying that he was going to cut off Hamel's arms. How dare the youngest member of a mercenary guild go crazy and commit mutiny? Therefore, Hamel beat up the mercenary guild leader too. Obviously, since he had, in fact, revolted against the leadership, he could no longer stay in the mercenary guild. The young Hamel thus quickly gathered his belongings and ransacked the pockets of the unconscious Vanos and other mercenaries. After that, he left the mercenary guild. Hamel thought that was going to be his last time seeing Vanos. When Vanos had become Oryx and protected the Keel border, Hamel was in Vermouth's party. At the request of the Keel Emperor, they headed to the Keel border. When they arrived, however, the battle was already over. The general who was guarding the border introduced Oryx to the hero party in a rather grand manner. Since Hamel hadn't met Vanos for a long time, he wasn't able to recognize Vanos from his appearance. On top of that, Vanos looked different too. His hair was now red and his eyes became blue. Yet Hamel remembered Vanos' mana. Of course he would. Vanos had always nitpicked on how Hamel trained his mana. Though for a person who spouted that much bullshit, Vanos surely didn't have many cores or that much mana. "Do I have something on my face?" Alcester asked as he shyly brushed his cheek. "I must have stared at him for too long." After the thought, Eugene casually answered, "I was just amazed to meet the descendant of the legendary half-dragon. That's all." "Ah." Alcester grinned as if he understood why Eugene stared at him. "I am talking to the descendants of the great Vermouth, so I know I shouldn't be too proud. But my ancestor, Sir Oryx Dragonic, was also a legendary hero." Eugene desperately held back his laughter. "My ancestor couldn't refuse the Emperor's request at the time, so he remained in Keel and protected the Empire. However, according to our family's history, he always regretted not going to Helmuth." Under the cloak, Eugene pinched his own thigh. Mare also read what was going on in Eugene's head. Without any personal reasons, Mare helped Eugene hold back his laughter by also pinching and twisting the skin on Eugene's waist and arms. "Are you Vanos? You've got the wrong man. My name is Oryx Dragonic. My father is Parliske the dragon. It's little, but I can still sense Vanos' mana." "I don't know who Vanos is." Vanos had kept on pretending that he didn't know anything, so Hamel had made him tell the truth. Hamel had some proof to back up his words. "You motherfucker. You are a Demon King's spy, aren't you? That's outrageous. You see, the Vanos I know is a bastard who is weaker than a stone rolling around on the street. How can such a bastard get this much stronger within 10-something years? Lord Hamel. I heard you were also an ordinary mercenary. Everybody already called me freakishly strong when I was a mercenary, but they didn't call you that, Vanos. How can I not have some doubts when a weak-ass bastard like you has gotten this strong? Tell me the truth, you son of a bitch. You are a Demon King's spy, aren't you? A Demon King ordered you to infiltrate Keel and kill the Emperor, right? What in the world?" Hamel hadn't felt the need to talk about this any further. He had simply pounced at Oryx. Baffled, Oryx had fought back right away. However, it hadn't taken long for Oryx to roll around on the ground, bleeding from both nostrils. "Speak the truth, you son of a bitch. You are a Demon King's spy, aren't you?" "No, I told you I'm." Arg. After beating the living daylight out of Vanos for a bit, Hamel could finally hear about what had happened to him. Due to Hamel's rampage in the Mercenary Guild, the guild had disbanded. Therefore, Vanos had been forced to bounce around multiple mercenary guilds to gain experience. During that era, a mercenary's main job had been to fight in wars, but that wasn't their only job. You explored an underground dungeon because of a quest. But it turns out that the dungeon was a dragon's tomb. When you touched a dragon heart in that dungeon, its power entered your body. Are you fucking kidding me? Why do you keep saying I'm lying? If you are going to lie, you have to make your lies more believable, you know? Oryx had cried his eyes out at the time, his tears mixing with snot and blood from his nose. In Eugene's head, Oryx's face at the time overlapped with the face of Alcester, who was sitting right in front of him. As a result, Eugene almost lost it, even though Mare was still pinching him with all her might inside the cloak. If my ancestor had gone to Helmuth with the heroes, the great Vermouth might have made more achievements. Alcester spoke, looking outside the carriage's window. Of course, Alcester had no way of knowing that story. Eugene, on the other hand, knew Oryx and what had happened in the past, so it was torture for him to listen to Alcester. Oryx had been hellbent on not going to Helmuth 300 years ago. He had wanted to be treated with utmost respect in Keel, just fighting off the demonic beasts that invaded the border from time to time. If he had gone to Helmuth, Oryx would have had to fight every day and worry about someone shoving a knife into his throat every night. That was just how Helmuth had been at the time. The hero party also had no need for Oryx. At first, Sienna had been interested in Oryx's dragon heart, but she quickly became disappointed when she found out that Oryx didn't have that much mana even though he was the owner of a dragon heart. Hamel, do you know the saying, putting lipstick on a pig? Why would you put lipstick on a pig? You're dumber than a pig. Since Molin liked fighting against a strong person, he had also been interested in Oryx. However, his interest quickly dissipated once he found out that Oryx wasn't as strong as he had thought. As for Anise and Vermouth, they had shown zero interest in Oryx from the get-go. Anise said that the current party was ideal, adding someone would just break the balance. On top of that, she evaluated Oryx as someone who wasn't worth enough for her to wait until the party regained balance. Vermouth said the same stuff. The hero party didn't need an extra member. The 5 were fine on their own. Vermouth always said that. While the party had been wandering around Helmuth, they had met numerous heroes. Some had wished to be a member of their party. There had been some whom Hamel himself wanted as one of his party members. There was one thing he could never deny. Hamel was the weakest member in the hero party when they first arrived at the front line of Helmuth. Among the heroes who had already made a name for themselves in the area, there were many people who were stronger than him. Yet Vermouth never asked them to join his party. On the contrary, when other heroes approached him wanting to become a member, he firmly rejected them. Vermouth explained to them that it had been great fighting together on this or that occasion, but he had to be together with his current teammates. At the time, Hamel had really been unable to understand Vermouth. I still don't. Eugene thought, feeling mixed emotions. He put his hand inside the cloak and slapped the back of Mare's hand to stop her from pinching him. You seem to have a lot of respect for your ancestor, Eugene spoke, trying to be as calm as possible. Just like you respect the great Vermouth, Alcester spoke, smiling. My ancestor may not have fought against the demon kings in Helmuth, but he protected numerous Kiel citizens and the Kiel borderline as he remained in the Empire. Sir Vermouth protected the world by fighting against the demon kings, but my ancestor also devoted his life to Kiel. Alcester looked at the symbol of the White Dragon Knightly Order on his uniform. It is said that the first Kiel emperor was friends with a dragon. Alcester explained the founding myth of Kiel. From the start, the Kiel Empire has been friends with dragons. However, a long time has passed since the guardian dragon of the Empire died. No connection existed between the Empire and dragons afterward. But when my half-dragon ancestor arrived at Kiel 300 years ago, the Empire once again became friends with dragons. Cough. Eugene suddenly cleared his throat. What's wrong? Alcester swiftly asked. My wound from the fight with the Rakshasa princess suddenly ached. Eugene grabbed his chest, physically suppressing his laughter from coming out. Of course you would have an injury. The Rakshasa princess is strong, Carmen spoke as she turned her head away from the window. Holding her bandaged right arm, she continued, but we're strong too, kid. Well, I guess I can't call you kid anymore, Eugene. Why are you calling me kid then? Alcester timidly interrupted. Quiet, kid. I haven't survived a life-and-death battle with you, so you are still a kid to me, Alcester. Alcester wasn't able to understand Carmen's logic, but he decided to not nitpick on that. A dragon, huh? Carmen muttered under her breath as she stared at her bandaged fingers. Do you have something you would like to say? Eugene cautiously asked. No, it's nothing. Carmen put her hand in her coat pocket and chuckled. Heaven genocide. The pocket watch that hides its true form. As she kept on staring at her pocket watch, she furtively glanced at Eugene. A dragon, huh? Eugene stayed silent at Carmen's obvious act. What Carmen had said the day before crossed Eugene's mind. I found the heaven genocide through a coincidental encounter. No, a miracle. Wow, it has already been decades since I found it. I went through a magical experience when I was young. That's all I can tell you. You started anyway, so why can't you just tell me the whole damn story? I can't. I can't break the promise since promises are important. In any case, thanks to Carmen being really obvious, Eugene had a rough idea about how Carmen had gotten her hands on heaven genocide and who had made it. Wouldn't it be better if we go together? Alcester asked with a hint of discontentment. No, you guys should go by carriage. Carmen shook her head. I think it's inefficient. I asked you and the rest of the White Dragon Knights to guard the nearby areas of the Lion Heartland. I don't want strangers to enter the main estate. Due to Carmen's firm rejection, Alcester had no choice but to step back. In that case, I will do as you ask. We will use the warp gate at the outskirts of Ceres to visit the Lionheart's land. We will discuss how to protect the estate later. We will come to you, so you just put up a camp outside the main estate's wall or something, Carmen instructed Alcester. Leaving Alcester, Carmen went through the warp gate first. Following Carmen, Eugene also entered the warp gate. The sight of a familiar forest unfolded before his eyes. Did you do that because of the forest? Eugene asked Carmen, who was putting another cigar in her mouth. Yeah, that's why. Carmen nodded. Alcester isn't a black-hearted person. I have known him since he was a little child. At one time, I have exchanged knowledge for the sake of the Lion Hearts and the Dragonix friendship. Exchanged knowledge? Eugene tilted his head in confusion. I taught Alcester the Lionheart style. Alcester's father, the former Dragonic patriarch, taught me the Dragonic style. I personally think the Lionhearts were the ones who suffered a loss during the exchange. Carmen spoke, chewing on the end of her cigar. Soon she frowned as she felt the bitterness spreading in her mouth. To put it in another way, I was Alcester's teacher, so I know who Alcester is. He's timid, but his loyalty for his lord makes him overcome his timidness. Alcester's lord was the Emperor of Kiel. This forest is too valuable. There is not only the ley line made by the Great Vermouth, but there are also the trees that you brought. These things make the forest into a treasure warehouse. If Alcester finds out about the forest, he will definitely report back to the Emperor. He wouldn't try to take our land, but he is more than capable of producing a royal decree ordering us to cooperate and let the White Dragon Knights train in the forest. Things would get real noisy around here. As they talked, the other black lions arrived at the estate through the warp gate. Watching them, Carmen continued, the Rakshasa princess retreated, but don't lower your guard. Since she went that far last time, we don't know when she will strike again. After warning Eugene, Carmen went over to the black lions to discuss their future plans. Eugene approached Lavera, who looked noticeably pale. Master Eugene. Lavera's eyes lost focus for a moment. How are you feeling? Master Eugene, are you? Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. What's there for you to apologize? Eugene grumbled as he stood in front of Lavera. Stand still. Pardon. Don't move, Eugene repeated, grabbing Lavera's shoulders. Lavera was surprised, but she stood still, remembering Eugene's instruction. He is punishing me. Lavera thought and bit her lips. Although Lavera hadn't done it on purpose, Eugene had fallen into danger because he had gone out to the city with her. Since the slave had put her master into trouble, the slave had to be punished. Eugene groped Lavera's body, starting from her shoulder. His hands went slowly over her armpits, collarbones, and her chest. Lavera wasn't humiliated, but saddened by the fact that Eugene, whom she had idolized, was doing this kind of stuff to her. While talking with the black lions, Carmen happened to see what Eugene was doing to Lavera. She gaped in shock, her cigar falling out of her mouth. What on earth is he doing? Why here? They aren't alone. Why would he be groping an elven maid's body in front of everyone? Carmen's eyes lost focus. Eugene's touch was delicate, as if he was merely conducting some sort of diagnostic. After her chest, Eugene's hands had come down on Lavera's waist and abdomen. Turning her flushed face, Carmen loudly cleared her throat. Why don't you do it later? Got it. Eugene spoke calmly, not giving a hoot about the onlooker's impression. Got what? Carmen bewilderedly thought. Before she could say something, Eugene slapped Lavera's waist. Ugh. Feeling a shock spreading throughout her body, Lavera covered her mouth. Eugene infused his mana into Lavera as he kept his hand on her waist. Open your mouth, Eugene ordered. However, there was no need for Eugene to give such an order. Something instantly squirmed out from deep inside her body and filled her mouth. Blarg. Lavera vomited up a dark lump. Chapter 165. The Capital, 9. The dark lump dropped to the ground without making a sound. As Lavera witnessed it falling right before her, her eyes widened in shock. She tried to take a few steps back, covering her mouth, but she ended up falling on her bottom. Unable to say anything, she just looked up at Eugene. Master. Eugene. It is. Lavera asked, stuttering. How are you feeling? Eugene kept his eyes on Lavera. Pardon? Haven't you been feeling weird since you returned to the forest? You might have felt nausea, a headache. After hesitating a bit, Lavera nodded. Smiling as if he had known it all along, Eugene tapped the dark lump on the ground with his foot. It was because you had this thing inside you. Iris had given up on Lavera too easily, which made Eugene have doubts. Just in case, Eugene had scanned Lavera's body, and to his absolute lack of surprise, he had found Iris' darkness right where he had expected it. Something terrible could have happened, Carmen mumbled as she frowned. She had witnessed how Iris could use her darkness in so many different ways. Therefore, seeing the darkness cluster filled Carmen's mind with questions. What if Iris infiltrates the Lionheart main estate with her army using that darkness? What if she destroys the Lionheart warp gate so we can't ask for outside help and attacks the estate after seizing the forest? Carmen approached the darkness to squash it but was stopped by Eugene. What are you doing? As he glanced at Carmen's fist, he said, There is something I want to check. Check what? Eugene told her about his hypothesis on how Iris might not be able to enter the forest. After staring blankly for a while, Carmen cleared her throat. Actually, I thought that might be the case too. He was lying. Iris couldn't approach the forest because of the world tree inside the forest? The thought had never crossed her mind. However, it sounded plausible when Carmen heard Eugene's hypothesis in detail. If Iris wasn't thinking about the consequences of her actions, it would have been much simpler for her to infiltrate the forest rather than stage a hostage situation. Am I right? Eugene thought. He picked up the darkness cluster with his wind, then headed into the forest. The lump reacted noticeably as Eugene went deeper into the forest. When Eugene had almost reached the center of the forest, the lump started to wobble as if it was going through a seizure. Moments later, it turned into ashes and disappeared. The darkness created by the demon eye of darkness wasn't mana or demonic energy, but it was under Iris' control. When an elf was corrupted after accepting demonic energy, they became a dark elf. The world tree protected elves. Although the demonic disease killed elves, elves wouldn't contract the disease in the world tree's land. And even if they had already contracted the demonic disease, the disease wouldn't progress any further in the land. The Rakshasa princess can't enter this forest. I'm guessing it also applies to her dark elf subordinates. Carmen began to think as she stroked her chin. Then would it be better to make the White Dragon Knights go away? Do we have to? It's not like we have to pay them. They volunteered to protect the estate. That is true. Besides, we wouldn't have gone through this unfortunate event if they had been doing their job right in the first place. And the Rakshasa princess might use another method since she can't enter the forest, right? Eugene shrugged. Eugene's logic was flawless. Nodding, Carmen stared at Eugene intensely. I feel a bit ridiculous to say this now, but you have quite the skill. Eugene thought the same about his interlocutor. Carmen Lionheart was stronger than he had expected. He was aware that Doins had been considered to be the strongest Lionheart, but he had never seen Doins fighting. However, as he witnessed Carmen fighting against the Rakshasa princess, he had thought that she was strong enough to be considered the strongest Lionheart. She dealt with Iris' demon, pretty well considering it was her first time seeing it. If Iris hadn't gotten stronger over the past 300 years, Eugene would have killed Iris using the Moonlight Sword during the fight with Carmen. Feeling how long 300 years was, Eugene clicked his tongue. It doesn't just apply to Iris either. Although Ryzakia was half dead and wandering around a dimensional rift, the other two dukes, the Queen of Night Demons and Incarceration's Blade, were alive and well. Gavid Lindman, Incarceration's Blade, was doing particularly well. When Eugene recalled Gavid's black sword and the sound of his clanking chain, he felt a shiver down his spine. Without revealing what he was feeling, Eugene turned to Carmen, who was deep in thought. What are you thinking about with that serious look on your face? You said Hector escaped from the Black Lion Castle, right? Yes, that's right. Eugene nodded. Is there a possibility that Hector is linked with the Rakshasa princess? With her demon eye, it would have been a piece of cake for the Rakshasa princess to help Hector escape. No, that's highly unlikely. Hector had used magic to escape. That was why Hector had left a trace. If Hector had used Iris' demon eye to escape, there was no way he would have left a trace. Besides, only Iris could use her darkness as a passage. Just because Hector had Iris' darkness inside him didn't mean that he was able to use it to flee. Not to mention, was there any reason for Iris to show up and take Hector away? Why would she have bothered to leave a trace of magic just so that she could conceal her involvement in the matter? No matter how hard Eugene thought, he couldn't think of a reason. You surely know a lot about the Rakshasa princess, Carmen muttered under her breath as she blinked. Eugene hurriedly straightened his face. Come to think of it, Eugene had revealed too much to Carmen. Your personality is different from your looks, huh? Carmen randomly asked. Pardon? You listened to Alchester's boring family history with interest and often hung out with Sir Genos at the Black Lion Castle. The Rakshasa princess even mistook you to be a Lionheart hound. Yeah, she did. You might already know this, but Sir Genos' family is a rather prestigious collateral family. I might be offending them if I talk this way. Anyway, the Great Vermouth made Sir Genos' family work like a hound for the Lionhearts. And then he passed down the Hamel style, his deceased friend's style. That's how the Black Lions were founded. Yes. I heard about that too. I guess Sir Genos adores you so much that he even passed down his family's secret technique, huh? Well, I can see you and Sir Genos get along pretty well. You two both like old stories. After coming to a conclusion on her own, Carmen had a pleasant smile on her face. For a moment, Eugene had worried that Carmen had found out about his true identity. He could see that he was worrying about nothing, however, when he saw Carmen's pleasant smile. Yeah. I respect Sir Hamel. It seemed like it. Your current level is not something that can be achieved with just innate talent. You wouldn't be able to reach this high without going through the kind of training that makes you shed blood instead of sweat. You must have put so much effort into training that ordinary people would never be able to imagine it. Carmen looked at Eugene with seriousness. Her golden eyes shone under the sunset. Eugene felt uncomfortable as he listened to her, but he also felt rather good to have his efforts recognized like this. Deep respect and affection for Sir Hamel made you the person you are today, Carmen solemnly spoke. She was pretty content with herself because she thought she had said something really cool. Carmen put her hand on Eugene's shoulder and nodded. During your coming-of-age ceremony last year, I was the one who sparred with you, but I will acknowledge it again today. Eugene Lionheart, you are not only worthy of the name Lionheart, but you are also a giant flame who will make the Lionheart's future bright. Yes. Is that so? Therefore, I want to gift you a rightful name as a Lionheart elder and a senior in martial arts, Carmen spoke solemnly. Huh. Eugene sensed something weird was going on. A lion with a bluish-white flame that encompasses lightning. Carmen looked up at the sky with dazed eyes. Wait. Lightning Flash Azure Fire God. Carmen frowned and wondered why the name didn't sound as catchy when she said it out loud as it did in her mind. Then she noticed her own bandaged right hand. The bandage was wet with blood. Yes. From now on, you are Eugene Lionheart, the Blood Lion. Lady Carmen, look. The Blood Lion annihilates his family's enemies. He will walk a blood-soaked path, but he will always stay elegant, beautiful, and strong. Eugene couldn't take it anymore. He tried to get out of there, but Carmen didn't let Eugene's shoulder go. Frup, frup, frup. The Black Lions, who had been silent, began to clap. They were part of the 3rd Division, which was led by Carmen. Intimidating, frightening men applauded Eugene, looking sincerely touched. They are all fucking crazy, Eugene desperately thought. In his past life, Eugene had also named his techniques so weirdly that even now the names made him cringe from time to time. However, the names Azura Rampage and Poltergeist Aegis felt pretty normal in comparison to what he was experiencing now. And why in the world were they clapping? They had all clearly gone mad like Carmen, since no sane people could respect and follow such a captain. Maybe Seal is also. The sound of Seal's annoying laughter came to his mind. She had already been working as Carmen's squire and studying under her. Seal respected and followed Carmen. Eugene was seriously worried that Seal had gone mad like them. Princess. A dark elf approached, worrying about Iris. However, Iris waved her hand with a nonchalant face. I'm fine. She wasn't acting tough. It was true that she had gotten hit multiple times, and her enemies were stronger than she had thought. Indeed, a diamond lying on a dunghill was still a diamond. The Lionhearts were strong enough to call themselves the best warrior family on the continent. Chuckling, Iris sat on a sofa. Carmen Lionheart, the Silver Lion. Eugene Lionheart. I guess the two of them are enough to make the Lionhearts the strongest warrior family on the continent, Iris mumbled as she undid one of her buttons. Although she had been hit so many times, there wasn't a single bruise on her body. She had finished recovering during the brief time it had taken her to teleport back to this place. Maybe I should have put myself out and taken them hostages. Iris regretted it. If she had taken Eugene and Carmen hostages, she could have used them to negotiate with Lionheart and take 100 elves. With difficulty, Iris let go of her regrets. From the start, Iris hadn't planned to negotiate with the Lionhearts. Therefore, she had illegally entered the Kiel Empire, made a ruckus in Ceres and attacked the Lionhearts. There was no longer room for negotiation. "Are you okay, princess?" The dark elf asked again, unsure about Iris' condition. "I'm fine." Rattle. The carriage departed. It was more like a wagon, and Iris and the dark elves were now in the back of the wagon. The wagon was covered with a large, thick canvas, so they couldn't see what was going on outside. Leaning against the sofa, Iris touched her abdomen. "I have been persistent over the past 300 years, Iris quietly spoke. Dark elves were sterile. Once they had become corrupted after accepting demonic energy into their body, dark elves could no longer have children no matter what. In other words, Iris had to corrupt elves in order to increase the number of dark elves. There are 100 elves in the Lionheart Forest. Even though I want to use them to increase the number of dark elves, I can't use them to fight." Iris gritted her teeth. The elves were still on Iris' mind. When she had heard that the descendants of the fucking Vermouth were protecting elves, she had really wanted to just barge in and take the elves away. The fact that elves didn't want to go with Iris didn't matter to her. However, it turned out that it was impossible for Iris to do so. As a recon, she had once gone to the Lionheart land, but her heart and head had started to ache as she went closer. Even the demon eye of darkness, which was Iris' strongest power, didn't function properly. While retreating, she had come to a realization. Even if she successfully made 100 dark elves, would there be any dark elves whom she could fight with right away? Elves had long lifespans, but they didn't use those to become stronger. Iris was well aware of this, since she had once been an elf herself. Iris thought that elves were God's mistake. They spent hundreds of years doing nothing meaningful. They were born with powerful magic and astonishing spirit affinity. However, all they focused on was cultivating forests, planting flowers, and picking fruits, instead of training their innate affinities. Although elves were better than humans in every way, they cooped themselves in a closed society without trying to procreate. Elves were like that, and Iris was sure that most elves under the Lionheart's protection were the same. If there's any elf who would be able to fight right away after becoming a dark elf, that would be Signard. "I'm not sure if the rest of them have even tried holding a sword," Iris bitterly thought as she stared at the white canvas. It was important to increase the number of dark elves, but what Iris needed right now were elves whom she could fight with to achieve a great task, not incompetence. Even if she successfully made 100 elves into dark elves, they wouldn't be much of a help to her. In fact, they would be just burdens to Iris. The demon eye of darkness teleportation ability wasn't omnipotent. That was why they were riding on a wagon. They would have needed several more wagons to move another 100 dark elves. Fuck. Iris heaved a big sigh with a cigarette in her mouth. Everything led down to one conclusion. Her war chest was almost empty. Since she had left Helmuth, she could no longer receive the Dark Elf Support Fund. Yes, she had accumulated a fortune over hundreds of years. However, she had used it up to grease demon folk bureaucrats who were making new administration policies and to fund multiple wild goose chases. A sugar cube in a cup of hot tea would have melted away slower than the gold in her vaults. "How long will it take for us to get to the harbor?" Iris asked as she frowned a bit. "It will take 10 days by wagon." They had no plans to use a warp gate. Iris clicked her tongue and lit her cigarette. "Are you guys really okay?" Holding the cigarette smoke in her lungs, Iris looked at her subordinates as she cautiously spoke. "We are dark elves, but we were once elves. It is in our nature to feel peace in forests, but there are no forests in the seas. Don't doubt yourself, princess." A dark elf who had been serving Iris for a long time bowed. "We all have devoted everything to your cause, princess. I know that, but many dark elves and mercenaries are already waiting for you in Shimuan." Without answering, Iris blew out the smoke in her lungs. A few moments later she asked, "Have you guys ever been on a ship?" "I haven't." "So you've never sailed a ship, have you?" "I can learn if I need to. I think it would be faster to just seize a ship. We can get a human who knows how to operate a ship, right?" Another dark elf interrupted. Yeah, that would be better. We already decided we will become pirates anyway. Iris sighed, blowing out another cloud of smoke. Due to the development of warp gates, the world of trading had gone through a cataclysmic change. However, that didn't mean that was the end of maritime trade. Although warp gates were really convenient, the installation cost was astronomically high. The countries that owned warp gates also had to regularly spend tremendous amounts of resources for maintenance. Warp gates had naturally become a yardstick in determining whether or not a country was advanced. Therefore, there was no way for small island countries or cities to own warp gates. That was why Iris decided that she would become a pirate. Everybody considered Sea Kingdom Shimuan an advanced country, but many islands near Shimuan had no warp gates. On top of that, Shimuan also traded with Samar Rainforest. Elves often used Shimuan's trading ships to get to Samar. I can fill up my war chest and increase the number of dark elves at the same time. Yeah, there's nothing bad about it except for the fact that we have to live on the sea. Or, we could settle in Samar. How does that sound? According to the fellow dark elves who settled there first, it's a harsh environment, but it's not bad to start working on our great task. One of her dark elves cautiously suggested. There are too many tribes under Helmuth's control in that place, Iris spoke as she bit the cigarette filter. I became so pathetic. After stubbing out her cigarette, Iris buttoned her shirt again. If I had just won the territorial war with that bitch Norgia Bella. The Queen of Night Demons was the reason why Iris had to leave Helmuth. She bit her lips as she recalled the events.